They tried to sink her. They announced her death. They celebrated her destruction. And every time, she came back. In the vast darkness of the Pacific Ocean, one ship refused to disappear. Bombed. Burned. Reported sunk, again and again. Yet she kept returning to the battlefield like a ghost that could not be killed. For Japanese commanders, her name became a curse. For American sailors, it became a promise. The USS Enterprise was not just an aircraft carrier. She was a moving threat. A symbol of survival. A weapon that carried fear across thousands of miles of open sea. Every time her planes appeared in the sky, Japanese defenses tightened. Every time smoke rose on the horizon, they wondered if it was her, again. Steel can be broken. Fleets can be destroyed. But legends are harder to sink. When the Pacific War erupted, the ocean became more than water and waves. It became distance. It became isolation. It became a battlefield where nations could vanish without warning. In this new kind of war, power no longer sailed in lines of battleships. It moved with the wind. It hid beyond the horizon. It struck from the sky. Aircraft carriers replaced coastal guns. Air power replaced armor. And survival depended on who could control the air above the sea. Japan understood this early. Its carrier fleets had shocked the world at Pearl Harbor. For a brief moment, the Imperial Navy believed the Pacific belonged to them. But the ocean does not stay silent forever. As America struggled to recover, one carrier remained at sea. While others lay damaged or destroyed, she kept moving. Launching aircraft. Hunting fleets. Refusing to retreat. The USS Enterprise became the spearhead of a counterattack that would reshape the war. Not through one battle. Not through one strike. But through relentless presence. Through survival. Through the simple fact that she was always there, when Japan least expected it. Before she became a legend, she was steel, rivets, and ambition. Built not for show, but for war. Designed in an age when aircraft carriers were still an experiment. The USS Enterprise was commissioned as part of a new vision. A vision that believed the future of naval warfare would be decided above the waves. Not by the size of guns. But by the reach of aircraft. She was fast for her time. Faster than most battleships. Fast enough to choose when to fight, and when to disappear into the horizon. Her flight deck was long and unforgiving. Her hangars crowded with fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes. Each aircraft a weapon. Each pilot a risk. But it was her crew that truly defined her. Thousands of sailors. Young. Inexperienced. Yet driven by a growing sense that they were standing on the edge of history. Life aboard the Enterprise was relentless. Long watches. Constant drills. The smell of fuel and salt mixed with tension. There was no illusion of safety. Everyone knew the carrier was both powerful and vulnerable. A floating airfield that could burn if struck correctly. And yet, confidence grew with every mile she sailed. With every aircraft launched and recovered. With every exercise that proved she could fight and survive. She was not the largest carrier in the fleet. She was not the newest for long. But she was reliable. Aggressive. Always ready. Long before Japan would learn to fear her name. The USS Enterprise was already becoming something more than a ship. She was becoming a force. On the morning Pearl Harbor burned, the USS Enterprise was not there. By chance. By timing. By a narrow margin that would change history. She was returning from a mission, her aircraft scattered across the sky. Pilots flying home. Fuel running low. Expecting nothing more than a routine landing. Instead, they flew into chaos. Smoke rising from the harbor. Explosions tearing through battleships. The sound of war arriving without warning. Enterprise aircraft were among the first American planes to engage the attackers. Not from a prepared defense, but from confusion. From shock. From instinct. While Pearl Harbor burned, the Enterprise remained untouched at sea. No bombs fell on her deck. No torpedoes cut into her hull. But the message was clear. The war had found her. For Japan, the failure to destroy the Enterprise was a mistake that would echo. They had struck the heart of the Pacific Fleet. But they had missed its future. Enterprise did not chase revenge that day. She did something more important. She survived. And in survival, she became priceless. One of the few American carriers left operational. One of the few tools available for a counterstrike. From that moment forward, she was always in motion. Always searching. Always hunted. Japan believed Pearl Harbor had secured dominance. But somewhere beyond the horizon, the USS Enterprise was still sailing. And she was already preparing to strike back. Japan believed the distance made them untouchable. Oceans wide enough to protect the homeland. Confidence built on surprise and speed. The USS Enterprise helped destroy that illusion. In early 1942, she sailed west with a dangerous secret on her deck. Army bombers. Not designed for carriers. Not meant to land at sea. The mission was simple in words, brutal in reality. Strike Japan. Then disappear. Enterprise did not launch the bombers herself. But she guarded them. Shielded them. Carried them closer than any American force had dared before. When the moment came, the bombers lifted into the air early. Too early. Detected sooner than planned. Risk accepted without hesitation. Japan was shocked. The unthinkable had happened. American bombs fell on Japanese cities. The physical damage was limited. But the psychological impact was enormous. The myth of safety was gone. For Japanese leadership, the question was immediate and terrifying. If America could strike now, what would come next? The answer was already at sea. The USS Enterprise turned back toward the Pacific. Her mission complete. Her presence revealed. From that moment on, Japan hunted her. Tracked reports. Counted sightings. Announced her sinking, again and again. But she kept returning. Still moving. Still fighting. The Doolittle raid was not a victory of destruction. It was a victory of belief. And the USS Enterprise had helped ignite it. By mid-1942, the Pacific was holding its breath. Both sides knew a decisive clash was coming. Both sides knew aircraft carriers would decide it. Japan set a trap near a tiny island called Midway. A plan built on confidence. On experience. On the belief that America was already beaten. But the USS Enterprise was waiting. Her crew did not know every detail. They did not need to. They understood one thing clearly. If they failed here, the Pacific might be lost. When the first aircraft lifted from Enterprise's deck, the sky filled with uncertainty. Fighters searching for enemies they could not see. Bombers flying long, fuel-burning paths over empty ocean. Hours passed. Targets were missed. Formations broke. Hope thinned. Then, in a moment that would reshape the war, everything aligned. Enterprise dive bombers found the Japanese fleet at its most vulnerable. Flight decks crowded with fueled aircraft. Bombs armed. Crews exposed. They attacked without hesitation. Sirens screamed. Bombs fell. Fire followed. Within minutes, Japan's most powerful carriers were burning. Akagi. Kaga. Soryu. What Japan had built over years was destroyed in moments. Enterprise was hit later. Bombs struck her deck. Fires erupted. Smoke poured into the sky. But she did not sink. Damage control teams fought relentlessly. Sailors dragged hoses through flame and debris. The ship lived. Midway was not just a battle. It was a turning point. Japan lost its carrier dominance. Its experienced pilots. Its momentum. And at the center of that collapse stood the USS Enterprise. Still afloat. Still operational. Still dangerous. From Midway onward, the legend could no longer be denied. The carrier Japan feared most was no longer a rumor. She was a fact. Midway did not end the danger. It multiplied it. From that point forward, the USS Enterprise became a priority target. Every Japanese pilot knew her name. Every strike group searched for her silhouette on the horizon. She was hit. Again and again. Bombs tore into her flight deck. Explosions shook her hull. Fires raced through steel corridors filled with smoke and screams. At times, the damage seemed fatal. Aircraft burned where they stood. Fuel ignited. The deck twisted and split under the force of impact. But the ship refused to die. Damage control teams moved without hesitation. Men fought flames with bare hands and exhaustion. Others carried the wounded while explosions still echoed above them. The Enterprise slowed. Listed. Smoked heavily. Yet she stayed afloat. More than once, Japanese reports claimed her destroyed. Radio announcements declared her sunk. Celebrations followed. And then she appeared again. Repaired at sea. Patched in record time. Back in combat when logic said she should have been gone. For Japan, it became maddening. A carrier that would not stay dead. A target that absorbed punishment and returned stronger. For the American fleet, she became a symbol. If the Enterprise could survive, then victory was still possible. Her scars told a story written in fire and steel. Each repair a reminder. Each return a warning. You could hit her. You could burn her. But sinking the USS Enterprise was something Japan never managed to do. Fear in war is not always born from defeat. Sometimes, it is born from uncertainty. The USS Enterprise created exactly that. Japanese intelligence tracked her relentlessly. Every radio intercept. Every pilot report. Every shadow on the horizon raised the same question. Was she back again? Time after time, reports claimed she had been sunk. Time after time, those reports were wrong. And every mistake deepened the fear. The Enterprise became more than a carrier. She became a presence. An expectation of attack. Japanese commanders never knew where she would appear next. 1 week in the Central Pacific. Another striking deep into contested waters. Always just close enough to threaten everything. Her aircraft did not just bomb targets. They disrupted plans. Forced reroutes. Delayed operations. Entire strategies were rewritten because of her movements. To the Japanese Navy, she felt unavoidable. A ghost ship that slipped through defenses. A predator that never announced itself until it struck. Morale suffered. Confidence cracked. Even when she was damaged, she returned. Even when declared destroyed, she reappeared. Each return carried a psychological weight heavier than bombs. For American sailors, the Enterprise represented hope. For Japanese forces, she represented persistence without mercy. She did not dominate through numbers. She dominated through survival. In a war defined by loss. The USS Enterprise stood as a reminder that some enemies do not break. They endure. And endurance, more than firepower, is what made the Enterprise the carrier Japan feared most. As the war dragged on, the battles grew closer to Japan. The enemy was cornered. But also more dangerous than ever. The USS Enterprise continued forward. Despite damage. Despite exhaustion. Despite the weight of years at sea. Her missions now carried a different tone. Not surprise. Not shock. But relentless pressure. Japanese defenses hardened. Kamikaze attacks filled the skies. Pilots no longer expected to return. Enterprise was struck again. Violently. Deliberately. A kamikaze tore into her deck. Explosions echoed through her core. Steel screamed. Casualties mounted. Smoke choked passageways. Fire threatened to consume everything. Once more, the question returned. Was this finally the end? It was not. The crew fought as they always had. With discipline. With speed. With refusal. Repairs followed. Scars deepened. But the ship remained operational. As American forces closed in on the Japanese homeland, Enterprise aircraft flew mission after mission. Supporting invasions. Destroying remaining resistance. She was there when the war's outcome was no longer in doubt. And she was still there when the fighting finally stopped. When Japan surrendered. The USS Enterprise was one of the most decorated ships in naval history. She had survived nearly every major carrier battle of the Pacific War. She had outlived fleets. Outlasted enemies. By the war's end, she was no longer just a weapon. She was a witness. A witness to how endurance, not invincibility, wins wars. When the guns finally fell silent, the Pacific Ocean looked the same as it always had. Endless. Quiet. Indifferent. But history beneath its waves had been forever changed. The USS Enterprise did not win the war alone. No single ship ever could. But few ships carried the weight she did. She fought from the opening shock of Pearl Harbor to the final collapse of Japan's resistance. She was present when America was weakest. And still there when victory was secured. Other carriers were sunk. Others were rebuilt. Others came and went. The Enterprise endured. Her decks carried thousands of sorties. Her hull absorbed damage meant to destroy her. Her crew paid the price in blood, exhaustion, and loss. She was never invincible. She was vulnerable every time she sailed into combat. And that is what made her survival remarkable. For Japan, she became a symbol of frustration. A reminder that even perfect plans can fail. That some enemies cannot be erased by force alone. For America, she became something deeper than steel. She became proof that resilience matters. That persistence can outlast fear. When the war ended, the Enterprise did not fade into myth immediately. She returned home scarred. Worn. Victorious. In time, the steel would be scrapped. The decks would fall silent. But the story would remain. Because some ships are remembered for their power. Others for their size. The USS Enterprise is remembered for something rarer. She was remembered because, no matter how many times the world believed she was gone, she always came back.